No, men by definition are tainted.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Lord of Chaos. Not Lord of Chaos. Crown of Swords. Misfire. Start over.
Crown of Swords.
Stove it. Start over.
We finished that one.
Public service announcement. We are ramping up towards SpoilerCon, and this is going to be the first of a great many drips of information to all of you about SpoilerCon and how that is happening and all the hype it needs to go. So here we go. SpoilerCon. It's being held October 1st through 3rd in Portland, Oregon. Those dates are fixed. Absolutely fixed. We're currently planning on doing an in-person digital hybrid event. We're planning optimistically that everyone's going to be able to have the choice to come. And then a lot of people won't, obviously, because reasons and also life. And so we'll have a lot of hybrid stuff. We'll have a lot of online stuff. We learned a lot from that last year and really enjoyed doing it. So the online component will be present regardless of if physical SpoilerCon is able to happen. But we're planning on physical SpoilerCon currently. We've got information on the venue, registration, and art contest in the pipeline, but you don't get to know any of that yet. You can follow us.
It's definitely not because we haven't decided yet.
No, it's definitely a controlled descent with zero chaos.
As the social media coordinator, I can confirm that it is definitely just because it's a coordinated drip and not because we haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
We've made all decisions, have all plans completely solidified, and nothing will ever change between now and SpoilerCon. I can guarantee
all the
it.
cats are perfectly herded, totally organized. It's great. You can follow us for updates on Twitter at SpoilerCon and subscribe to the newsletter at bit.ly/SConNews. For all the updates, we're going to be very consistent about that being where you get information, in addition to yelling about it on the podcast, obviously. And yeah, we're just super excited. I know it's been quiet. We haven't really talked about it a lot so far because just the end of last year was wild. But we have been working behind the scenes, and we are going to continue working behind the scenes, and it's going to be so much fun. I'm super excited for you all to get together with us and SpoilerConify in October. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
And we have a really great committee too.
Yeah.
Like, we got some fresh faces.
Yeah, I want to say thank you so much to the planning committees, both current and past, that have put so much work into making this happen already and will continue to do so because, you know, we planned for a whole in-person con last year, and a lot of that planning is carrying forward into this year. Part of what's going to make this year, I think, awesome is that we're actually going to be able to, you know, reuse a lot of the ideas and venue. You know, no one can predict the future, but all indications indicate that everyone will have more than enough opportunity to be vaccinated by October. And I'm sort of moving forward on the assumption that we will be able to require vaccinations. So, and masks.
So we'll see, but we'll always have an international audience of people who can't make it any given year. And the online thing was so great last year. Like, we can't abandon the online component. It's just, like, it's here to stay.
And realistically, we will still probably have most of our anyone who's going to be an interesting guest might still join us on Zoom. So there will still be this opportunity to both, we'll all gather in a room to watch the Zoom call, but then also broadcast that online, right? So, and if someone is there in person, then we just do a Zoom call. You know, then we just broadcast it straight from there.
It's going to be awesome. There's going to be stuff for everyone, and so much excitement. I'm really, really, really excited to see what we pull off because we learned so much in the last year, right? Like, we are going to be able to apply that to so much magic. So definitely come join us with that. Yeah, you can trust what me and Jess say, but don't trust Seth.
Don't trust me. I am very unreliable.
I want to be reliable. Whether or not I am, I don't know.
Yeah, one aspires, but...
I think you are highly reliable.
Except for when I texted you and was like, hey, can we bump this back? And I said 5:30 my time. We're supposed to start at 5 my time, 5:30 my time. I just said 5:30. He's like, no, we're not doing that. I'm like, fuck, time zones. Okay.
Yeah. We're not pushing it 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what? Like, that's a really huge thing. Okay, yes, time zones.
Try something new where I'm going to introduce the guests. Today we have Jess the Amyrlin from the Amyrlin Study, formerly of the White Tower podcast. And, you know, we're having her join us on this, and she's done so much to help us, both in terms of work on the SpoilerCon planning committee, to being a guest on this podcast so many times, to, hey, being on my first live panel at the last Jordan Con. That was a blast. Remember you, me, and Daniel Green, right? Back when he was Small Fry.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and just having her be part of the community has been such a great thing that it's an honor to have her on. So I'm super excited to have you join us for the beginning of a new start.
I'm very happy to be here. It was fun revisiting this chapter because, you know, I have only made it all the way to the end of the series once. Like, I got to Winter's Heart, and then beyond that I only got through that one time. And I feel like the first 4 books I've read a bunch of times, and everything after that has been limited. So it was really fun revisiting this. I'm excited to talk about it.
Ding! This is a winning answer.
And with that bell, let's ring us in.
Oh, we gotta talk about the thing. We gotta talk about the prophecy.
We do have to talk about the prophecy. So I won't.
Yeah, but we're only doing the prologue part 1 of 4. We're doing 4 parts for this, but yeah.
Yeah, so just to let you guys know, this is just Elaida's POV today. There can be no health in us, nor any good thing grow, for the land is one with the dragon reborn, and he is one with the land. Soul of fire, heart of stone, in pride he conquers, forcing the proud to yield. He calls upon the mountains to kneel, and the seas to give way, and the very skies to bow. Pray that the heart of stone remembers tears, and the soul of fire, love. From a much disputed translation of the Prophecies of the Dragon by the poet Kiera Termindel of Shiota, believed to have been published between FY 700 and FY 800.
So much in that prophecy.
So much in that prophecy.
Oh.
Because there's 2 very legit interpretations of that prophecy, right? There's Soul of Fire, Heart of Stone, in Pride He Conquers, talking about Rand as the Dragon Reborn. But then right in the very beginning, he says he is one with the land. And so each one of those phrases refers to one of the kingdoms in the land as well. And Moraine calls that out when she uses this prophecy to unite the kingdoms behind Rand.
Yeah, when she comes back and is just walking around sweeping everyone off their feet in whatever the book is that happens in. I forget which nations all go with this, but I remember Elaine's in it.
Right, so mountains to kneel is the Borderlands. The seas to give away are the Sea Folk. I believe the skies are the, I want to say Barrelon and
Berlane.
Berlane, yeah.
I got really caught up in the Shiota part. That was where all my research went. I forgot to look into the prophecy connection. Okay, so Shiota. So specifically, Shiota is actually a country that comes up repeatedly. It is the nation that came before Altara. The capital city was the same location as Ebu Dar. It was famous for its feather dancers, and potentially that's kind of where the Festival of Birds, wearing 3 feathers and running around in Bacchanalian fashion, comes from, is the feather dancers of Shiota. The era was about a century before Arthur Hawkwing. This is one of the nations that came about between the Trolloc Wars and the 100 Years' War, so the Free Years. Yeah, about a century after this was made, there was Gwer Amalasan and then Arthur Hawkwing and all of that. So that's kind of where this sits in the history of the world. Oh, and one other useful thing about it, or interesting thing about it, is that is the nation when Saladar was the birthplace of an Amyrlin who saved the tower. That's why Saladar was named, was for this Amyrlin. This is the nation that contained Saladar at the time, and why that's their location. So that's...
Oh, okay.
Shiota is actually kind of an important lost civilization, as lost civilizations go in this book.
I learned today.
This is the important stuff.
I love that shit. All that world building shit. Like, yeah, give me all that.
Right? Like, how many years did it take him to build the world in his head upon which he could then write the story and be like, oh yeah, no, I need an ancient kingdom. Oh, fortunately, I have 7 to pick from that I've already built.
Right.
What do you think Soul of Fire refers to? I mean, I feel like Heart of Stone is probably the Stone of Tyr, right?
Yeah, Egwene.
Oh.
I mean, there's also, like, he's literally, like, Dragon Mount, right? That's got a soul of fire. It's got more of a skin of stone, less of a heart of stone.
But very much when she says, the soul of fire needs to remember love, I think that's Egwene needs to remember her love for Rand and her trust in him.
Oh, I always just figured it was all about Rand. I never thought of applying it to...
It's both, right? That's the whole thing that she points out, right? Is that he is both the land and the dragon. He is one with the land, and so, yes, every one of those lines definitely refers to Rand. He has a heart of stone. He has a soul of fire. He conquers in pride. But also, the land has a soul of fire and a heart of stone. The heart of stone being the stone in Tyr.
Well, it is the flame of Tarvalon. So soul of fire definitely works for the land having a soul of fire. Tarvalon, the flame of Tarvalon, Egwene, that works really well, actually. Yeah, I love how much this one came back, because it's such beautiful poetry, and then the way that Moraine made her grand re-entrance, like, wielding this was just like, so flamboyant and wonderful.
Country is which, when Moraine points to them, but she wields this against them.
I think you're right. It was like the Borderlands and Egwene for sure, and then it's just a matter of which ones. But, like, honestly, who cares about the other nations? Like, whatever.
Secondary, doesn't matter.
Oh, Abigail's saying that Kyrie's topless towers could have been the sky. Yeah, and the very topless towers to bow. That, I like that. I think Soul of Fire would be Andor, if you're going to go with nations, because they are so outspoken, and they have that, like, red and white imagery, and they've got really lusty monarchs, so...
And in a lot of ways, we can think of the weather, and Cat Lord Chaos is pointing this out, that I talked about how when they were on the road, the weather had a lot to do with Rand's moods. And the same is still true, right? The hot weather has a lot to do with the fact that he is absolutely getting angrier and angrier and angrier, so the weather's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. Then the Bowl of Winds are used, and Rand goes cold, right? He becomes Quendiar. And that's when everything freezes, and that's when he has Winter's Heart, and that's when the land is in the heart of winter.
You just blew my mind.
Kind of a lot, actually.
And then when Rand goes up to Dragonmount and has Veins of Gold, he walks down and the weather starts to restore itself and balance itself back out because he's restored himself as well.
I really like that.
And he can birth the apple trees and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it makes sense because it's like neither one is pulling the other exclusively, right? It's very much one is reflecting the other, is reflecting the other, is reflecting the other.
As the physicists say, the mass tells space how to curve, and curved space tells mass how to move. The dragon tells the land how to react, and the land influences
Super
the dragon.
Skylake came through with a quote from A Memory of Light, Chapter 6.
Thank you, Super Skylake. She looked to Gregorian. In pride he conquers, forcing the proud to yield. And I forget which...
That's Ilion. Gregorian Lucianos, Laurel Crown, that's Ilion. Yeah.
Gotcha. To the borderlanders, he calls upon the mountains to kneel. We got that one. To the sea folk and the seas to give way. To Perrin, then Barillon, to the very skies to bow. So I was right about that one. Yeah. To Darlin, pray that the heart of stone remembers tears.
Because he's king of Tyr.
He's king of Tyr.
And then Elaine, soul of fire.
And Elaine is the soul of fire.
Nice.
Elaine is the soul of fire.
Yeah, because she's, lusty lion.
I didn't think that she was that sassy, but...
Well, I mean, she probably will be that sassy given another, 40 years of seasoning and getting over herself.
That's true. She's still pretty young. She hasn't had a chance to, come into her full sass powers.
Particularly not as queen, right? This is very much her as queen, and she is, 3 days into being a proper queen. So...
She's been a queen for, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Travis had to stick his head in and remind us that the heart of stone has to remember tears.
Yeah.
And where does he remember tears? In the heart of stone.
So many layers.
I'm just like thinking. I'm like digesting.
Would you like to read us into the prologue?
All right, I can do that. From the tall arched window, close onto 80 spans above the ground, not far below the top of the White Tower, Elaida could see for miles beyond Tarvalin, to the rolling plains and forests that bordered the broad river Aranon, running down from north and west before it divided around the white walls of the great island city. On the ground, long morning shadows must have been dappling the city, but from this prominence all seemed clear and bright. Not even the fabled topless towers of Cairhien had truly rivaled the White Tower. Certainly none of Tarvalin's lesser towers did, for all that men spoke far and wide of them and their vaulting sky bridges. This high and almost constant breeze lessened the unnatural heat gripping the world. The feast of lights past, snow should have covered the ground deep, yet the weather belonged in the depths of a hard summer. Another sign that the last battle approached, and the Dark One touched the world, if more were needed. Elaida did not let the heat touch her, even when she descended, of course. The breeze was not why she had her quarters moved up here, despite the inconvenience of so many stairs to these simple rooms.
So when I first read this, I thought Elaida was in the new apartments high up, but she's actually just higher in the White Tower so she can look down at her new palace being built. But she's still in the White Tower. Okay.
Yes.
She's just many stories above the normal suite of apartments for the Amyrlin.
In like a freaking closet.
Yeah. Relatively simple.
It's hard not to see her as this narcissistic, self-involved politician who's in it just for the power.
It's inescapable.
Yeah.
The absolute audacity of this woman.
The arrogance.
Like, she honestly thinks that she got this position because of her own capabilities, her own, like, the stuff that she's bringing to the table when she's obviously a puppet.
Yeah, her confidence that she can change the world, save the world, push aside the Dragon Reborn with her bombastic attitude towards what is right. It's just like, I mean, props for confidence in yourself, I guess.
And part of that is her foretelling. She relies on that. Now, she misinterprets it badly. Several of her foretellings.
Yeah.
But that's the secret she keeps bringing up, is that she knows the Andoran house is the key to the last battle. Why she thinks she's got any control over what's going to happen, I don't know.
I know, right?
Well, because she's the Amyrlin seat, and she, her word is law.
I am Tower Law. Yeah. Yeah, you see the foundation of that here.
Except for that, no.
So I love this idea of a working model. This, smaller to scale built house, so people know how to build the bigger house. That's the first I'd ever learned of it, is when I read this, and I guess it is actually like a common practice.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd never heard of it either. I love it so much. I mean, it makes sense because I've had like fabric patterns when my mom was teaching me how to make like grocery sacks out of fabric, like an actual folding pattern that just imitated the paper folding pattern for ultimate strength. She just made me a tiny little one like a Barbie might have used. So that way I could turn it inside out and see where all the seams were. And it was like, oh, I don't need written instructions. Just hand me this tiny little model and I can... the concept, yes, but for construction, so cool. Like, you could have the best playhouse ever, right? To leave one of those behind.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, you build a palace, right? But then, like, in the, you can, like, donate that to the people that built it. Like, here's your thing for your kids.
The local preschool or something like that.
Yeah.
5-year-old me is freaking out right now.
I know, right? Also, can we talk about the arrogance of I'm going to tear up the warder training ground and build myself a palace that rivals the entire institution of the White Tower?
I mean, she's trying to get Gawain killed just to get him out of the way, so her respect for fighting men her respect for men in general is 0, but for fighting men it's even less.
I mean, the institution of the tower.
For some reason, that part really bothered me. The part where she dug up the warder training grounds. It's like, okay, fine, you choose not to have warders, that's fine, but could you, I don't know, respect the fact that other people do?
And, like, it's a huge part of the institution and order of Aes Sedai. Aes Sedai and warders are so common that Myrddraal don't know them as separate entities. Or on the one offense, she just wants to build a palace to equal the White Tower for herself, right? The White Tower is a 3,000-year-old institution, but sure, let's have one mortal woman have a palace on par with it. Fine, whatever. Also, you want to gut one of the most foundational institutions within the something that, like, most of the sisters have at least respect for, if not participation in, you're just gonna completely gut that because it just, I'm like, how does anyone support her? How can anyone support someone who is this disinterested in their...
The Greens especially, like, they were fundamental in splitting and supporting Elaida. Like, there was the Greens and Whites were the two groups that really got her up to power, and this is how she repays the Greens, by tearing up their warder's training ground. Like, damn, that is cold. Yeah. That is really cold.
I am, and as I believe the kids say, nodding.
That newfangled expression someone came up with.
In the vernacular of the street.
And she's doing this all without Ogier builders. She's only now considering that she needs to get sisters using earth to fuse stones together. They should have been doing that from the beginning. Like, if she's going to build this thing, like, that's clearly necessary. Like, how are you going to get higher than the White Tower without using any of the techniques that was used to make the White Tower the tallest building ever?
The force of my will.
I think that this is pretty typical of Elaida's MO. She plays this long game. She had this foretelling. She knows that the ruling house of Andor is going to be important, but she doesn't stop to consider the fact that she could be misinterpreting it. And it isn't the first or the last time that she runs off half-cocked. She gets an idea. She doesn't stop to think it through. She doesn't think what the impact is going to be. It's just, I want a fancy tower because everybody needs to know that I'm the boss here. And that's what happens. She doesn't stop to think about any of the other consequences or what's going to be required or anything like that. And it's just, to me, that just seems like classic Elaida.
No, she's not the most subtle sister out there. She's very much like in your face, up front. I am going to tell you what I want. And thank God she was in Andor, because she would have been torn apart by anyone playing Game of House. Although, I mean, she did take down Suon, so it's like one of those things.
Did she, though?
You want to know what, though?
What?
I'm not sure. And again, it's been a minute, so my memory of the whole thing is going to be imperfect, but Elaida wasn't really the mastermind of that, was she?
She thinks she was, but she wasn't.
I actually I think she noticed something, went to Alviarin with it, and Alviarin took advantage.
Exactly. She never would have gotten anywhere with that without Alviarin being like, yes, me and the Black Aja are going to back this up.
Yeah, because we know there's at least 2 Black Aja and a Forsaken voting out Suon, so, like...
Yeah.
She's got the wrong people backing her, but...
Yeah, I mean, Elaida tried. I just don't think that she ever would have succeeded on her own political strengths. She's way too short-sighted and way too selfish, and, like, you see it repeatedly throughout this thing. She can't imagine that anybody doesn't think like her. Like, later in this perspective, she's like, can you think that these people would do this or that those people would do that? And that's literally exactly what they're doing, because they don't have the same priorities as her. They don't see the world the way she does, and she, like, doesn't even register that that is a possibility.
Yeah, a leader without empathy or the ability to look into someone else's minds is just a disaster. It leads to all sorts of
gestures at the last 4 years.
In case you didn't see it.
Yes, parallels may be abounding.
Alviarin is Mitch McConnell.
No, I'm thinking about, I don't remember if it was in The Great Hunt or whatever comes after that, but there's that scene where Elaida sees Min going into Swan's office, and she, like, her gears get grinding, and she knows that Swan is up to something, and then she runs into Alviarin, and then just sort of uncharacteristically confides in her about what she thinks is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm kind of thinking, because Bambi pointed out that Alviarin is the master of making people think it was their idea. So I'm wondering if Alviarin took what Elaida dumped, and then with others from the Black Aja came up with this plan to depose Swan, put Elaida on the Amyrlin seat basically as a puppet, while making her the whole time think that it was her idea and she is in fact the one who's in charge.
Absolutely. absolutely what happened. Totally. They're like, yes, Elaida, yes, run along, go make the front for us. That's handy, thank you.
The only question in my mind is whether Elaida is the one who noticed what was going on with Min without any prompting. From her POV, it seems like she did. But,
yeah, she recognized.
I mean,
that's the
the way that it's written is she's walking by and she sees Min dressed up like a girl talking to Gawain. Now, it is unclear whether it was somebody else who prompted her to be going that direction at that time.
I feel like at that point we're stretching a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's absolutely an unreliable narrator, but I don't know if she's that unreliable.
Well, and I mean, let's give her the agency of, like, she was trying to pull Swan down. She was looking for something. And, I mean, the whole connection with Gawain, right? Like, she would be paying attention to who's Gawain talking to. That person looks like, that person's going to talk to Swan. Like, I can work with this. I know I've seen her. Like, that makes sense to me.
And don't forget, between then and now, she's been touched by Fane.
Mm-hmm. She's really paranoid in this chapter. There's a lot of thoughts.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, I forgot about the Fane thing, but there's a lot of thoughts in here I highlighted where it's like, this is really paranoid.
That Fane thoughts. Yeah,
it's Fane.
I can't trust anyone except Red Sisters. Well, some of them. That's a Fane thought right there.
And like you said, Jess, it was very uncharacteristic of her to trust in Alviarin at first, and like, yeah, she doesn't trust anybody now, but she has to work with Alviarin. She's dug in so far. She has to work with her. She doesn't trust her.
And that's part of why she's so isolated, right? Is she doesn't trust anyone.
What do we think are the chances that when she spilled her guts to Alviarin, there was compulsion involved? Because since we know that Alviarin is black, she is not bound by any kind of vow that says that she won't do it.
She doesn't know it?
I think she just got lucky.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think
that's fair.
I think Elaida would have reached out to the nearest ambitious snake of a sister that was around. Like, because Alviarin is very much of the ignorant, low-powered dark friend variety, as these things are reckoned, and she gets taught, like, everything fancy. She is. But, yeah, I think Elaida probably went to whoever she knew would be open to it, which odds are that would be a black sister. But, I genuinely, I mean, and, like, I like to give Gawain agency for being a total douche canoe. I would like to give Elaida agency to not have been completely a puppet. Like, she did deliberately try to mess things up. It just so happens that she got taken advantage of.
She got it way over her head.
Yeah.
She stepped right into the Black Oddjaw's open arms, and they put her out front.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Rand's bouncing around with traveling, like, played into the kidnapping thing, and like how that helped. Like, Elaida's ambition to take down Swan really just played into what was going to happen anyway, and helped the wrong guys.
So we get some descriptions of some things she's pulled out of the basement. We've got this ornate clock. Horned and snout Trollocs fled from a cloaked Aes Sedai on one level. On another, a man representing a false dragon tried to fend off silver lightning bolts that had obviously been hurled by a second sister. And above the clock face itself, above her head, a crowned king and queen knelt before an Amyrlin seat in an enameled stole, with the flame of Tarvalon carved from a large moonstone atop a golden arch over her head. Had some trouble with that one.
It was a really long sentence, first of all.
It was. It was a lot of description of this clock. And I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted to actually shout out a different book called The Night Circus. If you're interested in really intricate, cool clocks, you should go read The Night Circus. Really great book. That description reminded me of the clock that is sort of a central object in The Night Circus. And so it was this cool idea that I wanted to... And I've just been looking for a chance to shout that book out because it was such a good book, and Marguerite is agreeing with me. Like, I read it like 6 months ago to a year ago. God, how long has it been? About 2 years ago. Last year doesn't count.
What's time?
And it's just been going, and it's been sort of percolating in my head, and I keep thinking about it over and over and over again. So, yeah, just totally non sequitur. I just really want to tell you, go read The Night Circus.
All right.
Night Circus, got it.
Night Circus.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't into clocks before, but actually I kind of am now. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I know, right? I'm like, clocks. Clocks are...
And it is a bit of a surreal love story. Just FYI.
All right. Neat.
I like
Aaron
love
Morgenstern.
Stories. Now, Kith.
Yeah. And a little bit of a period piece as well. So, like, if you're into sort of period piece, sort of old school like magic show circusy. It's super interesting. Like I don't even know.
This is ticking a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah,
it is. It does.
Love
it
story,
takes a lot of
historical
boxes. That's why I'm bringing it up. Yeah.
Yes. This sounds like a worthy addition to my rapidly expanding TBR. I used to just not have one because it was too hopeless, and then I decided to start one, and now I'm just drowning in.
Now it's still hopeless.
It's still hopeless. I'm back to the why I
it's still hopeless, but now
one.
you can see how hopeless it is.
Yep.
Very much a non-linear timeline as well. That's the other thing you should know going into it.
Goody. We know from Broken Earth that I like that.
Metal Datura in the chat said that the clock is like the mural in Thor Ragnarok. It's propaganda. Like, that clock is absolutely pro Aes Sedai propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. In this book, definitely.
Totally. Yeah, this is it even gives it in the description. Like, this is meant to evoke a bygone era. This is a make the Aes Sedai great again propaganda. That's literally the why Elaida is so into it. Is because it's about going back to the heyday when everything was great.
When Camille rose up and tried to take control and power and was smacked down in about 4 years, like some rebel confederacy.
Yeah, and then they put the artifacts in the basement where artifacts of the opposition belong. In a dusty basement where no one can fucking see them unless they're on a historical quest.
Yep. Although it does really make me want to find a Flame of Tarvalin, like a piece of jewelry made out of moonstone.
Facts.
So if anybody knows where to find that, let me know. Like, hit me up.
Yeah, that would be dope. I mean, I would love to see this clock in reality. It sounds like a gorgeous piece of glittering embellishment on the truth. I want it.
And then you need one like a fang carved out of like obsidian or something like
that
to mirror it.
Yes. Oh my god, somebody get on that right now.
Yeah, somebody open an Etsy shop like yesterday.
Someone with a lapidary. Get on it. Is that the right conjugation of that? With a lapidary? I don't know even how this works.
It sounds good to me. I will confess that I've not heard that.
I've heard it in a few contexts, so I might be misusing it wildly.
Well, I'm assuming that it's, a place where you can craft with rocks?
I think a lapidary is someone who cuts rocks and, like, cuts gems.
Okay.
So, like, if you had, like, a stone you wanted to get cut onto a ring, you'd, like, go to a lapidary and be like, cut around the flaw or something. But I'm not sure, like, where the conjugations are between the skill and the person and the action. Like, is it a verb and a noun? I'm not sure.
No, but who knows? No one knows.
Thank you, Discord, for having
no way to
exactly
find out.
crickets to help me out with this.
And this clock was made by Camille, who was a Grey, and she kind of had a bit of a failed tenure. During her tenure, the Terrans collected the twisted redstone doorway from Mayenne, and the nation of Harden collapsed.
And this was not that long ago, right? It was only in storage for like 300 years.
Right.
Oh, right, and
this
yeah,
is 700.
the twisted stone doorway was only in tier for 300 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So both of those things line up. Yeah, she was just basically all the power was taken away from her, and she became a puppet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Margaret is saying that it is an adjective and a noun. So I flailed in the correct direction. Thank you.
Excellent. The rules don't make sense, but if you follow them, most things work. Usually.
So yeah, so she was dreaming about a time before the Trolloc Wars. That is like 2,000 plus years ago. Like this Amyrlin, this Camille Amyrlin, she was very recent and trying to go back to over 1,000 years, over 2,000 years to a prior heyday. Like that is a huge attempt to reform the tower that clearly failed miserably.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, all such efforts fail because, if nothing else, humanity moves forward. And the further you get from some supposed heyday, the less the, current generations give a flying fuck about it and are like, no, we're not doing that. That's stupid. Because it's backward and dumb and whatever. So
it's also selective memory.
Yeah.
You remember the good times and forget the bad times. And you're like, oh, back in the day when everything was great. And it's like, no, things weren't that great. You're just not remembering.
No, they were actually super bad, you guys.
Yeah. And actually they were great for you, but not great for everybody. Yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't great for you, but they were less great for you. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, it's silly to need to go back. Like, really, progress is bad? Wanting to improve things is bad? Why? What? I mean, granted, in this world, the world has been falling apart for 3,000 years since a utopia, so I can kind of see where they're coming from. Let's move forward. People change. Institutions change.
Well, and I mean, the other piece of that puzzle, I think, is that, if she's talking about returning to the state of things before like before the breaking, like the conditions for that world don't even exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not possible.
But let's spend all of our energy recreating something that's impossible. That's useful.
Yeah, why not? That's definitely not other stuff we should be thinking about.
The next note I had is the timeline. Now, a pigeon arrived saying that Rand had been captured 12 days ago. Assuming the pigeon only takes a day or two to fly, and it left from Cairhien, where he was taken, right?
Yeah.
That this is pre-Dumais Wells, and I think the entire prologue is pre-Dumais Wells.
It's not, right? Isn't the next one? The next one starts with Savannah.
Well, it's Savannah, and then you go into Dumais Wells.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Right, it's Dumais Wells from her POV. So,
yes.
So we're starting when I say this entire chapter, I meant this entire Elaida POV.
Gotcha.
is pre-Dumais Wells. So we're jumping backwards in time a little bit, and we see that for a couple of things. We actually see Egwene live through the releasing of Moghedien twice.
Yep.
We see it in the epilogue of Dumais Wells, and then it happens again a couple of chapters from now. And we actually see that from her POV, same chapter, same scene, twice. So we jump back in time and relive some stuff.
Yeah, it's a good time synchronization.
It's surprisingly easy to keep track of it.
Yeah.
Like, I never had that much trouble figuring it out. Although I did wonder, because I wasn't like sitting down and doing the math or anything like that in terms of like, you know, how long Rand had been in captivity before Dumais Wells, but there was a part of me that was wondering if somebody had deliberately misinformed Elaida about Rand's capture and kept Dumais Wells from her. I'm sure you guys did the math and I didn't, so.
That does happen later. There is a point where all the messages come to Alviarn, and Alviarn hides it from Elaida.
Yeah, and Elaida doesn't hear about it until a sister arrives physically to report.
But that is not this scene. In this scene, it simply hasn't happened yet, as far as we can tell. And she hasn't sent anyone off, because in that scene, Tovann has failed to take the Black Tower.
Oh, yeah. That's when she has the twin failures of...
So she has the twin failures. She finds out about Dumais Wells and Tovann, and just how badly that they're going to fail, because they're on their way to take the Black Tower, where there's like 500 channelers.
Which is only a week or two forward in the timeline.
Yeah, it's not
from
very
here,
long.
because she's expecting Rand to get to her in 2 weeks tops. So that's how long it's going to take for the sister to show up and make that news come through.
Yeah, I say it again and again, but these last few books, they have such a tight timeline compared to the first 6. The first 6 happen over a year and a half, and the last 8 happen over 6 months.
Right, it might be a year and a half before we get to that 2 weeks down the timeline where that scene happens, because of how many books we have to do between now and then.
Honestly, I don't know how he kept track of all of it. How did RJ keep track of all this shit?
He has a big brain.
Yeah, I guess. Fucking, I'm imagining him with that guy in that meme with like all the stuff on the billboard and the yarn and shit like that. That's what I imagine.
Definitely, I imagine that there was a lot. What he was like to keep it all spreadsheets before. You know, he was doing like analog spreadsheets, not digital spreadsheets.
There's a reason Jordan's notes are a massive thing that people have to sort through, and they only release certain stuff from, because it was just like crazy amount of information. And and just the amount he read, and like what I know about his personality and the way he was able to make these connections, I think he kept a ridiculous amount of this in his head and knew about it. And that's why like he had to make so many notes for Brandon Sanderson before he died, is because he had to put so much down on paper that simply was in his head.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. He was just a genius for this work, and then had to pass it off to someone who was inevitably not the same kind of genius, because that's just a rare thing to be.
Here's one of those paranoid messages. Only Galena Casbin had been known to send that glorious message. Galena, whom Elaida trusted to do what she would have trusted no one save herself. Not that she trusted anyone fully, but the head of the Red Ajah more than any other. So we get the Galena's head of the Red Ajah. Again, I think we've known that. She said it to herself once or twice. But she also said she was she was part of the Black.
And obviously the message is, the ring has been placed in the bull's nose. I expect a pleasant journey to market, saying, I've got Rand. No one knows. I'm not going to have any issues. There's definitely not going to be, multiple armies crashing down on me at a pit stop halfway home. Like, that's not going to happen.
Also doesn't say anything about keeping the guy in a box.
Yeah, though there is later one of the paranoid thoughts is like, does Alviarin know more than she should with talk of Rand and leashing? Like, I have a feeling that Elaida was planning on putting him in a box or a leash, maybe a gilded one, but that was definitely where her and Galena were both pointed, just not the luggage and beating situation. I don't think that was in her plans, but I think that she's planning on confining him more and more the closer in he gets, right? So,
and I think she did instruct Galena to treat him harshly,
with all the respect he deserves.
Yeah.
As a man who can channel.
And two reds talking.
Yeah.
She starts off this chapter talking about how much the weather's changing and how awful it is, and how that indicates the last battle's coming, and then says Light sent that the last battle is years off in spite of the weather. And it's no, it's not. It's in 2 years. It's in 6 months. No.
100% happening super soon.
And you will not make it for multiple years. If this shit stays going for multiple years, everyone's dead.
Right. Her and Pedro Nile both just have issues with timeline. They both think they're oh, we have this long timeline, and it's no, you got 2 years max.
And I think, at least with Elaida, I think that for her, it's just how she has that problem looking at things from other people's perspective. She can't contemplate the idea that the last battle might come sooner because she needs it to be a few years away. So in her head, it is a few years away. She, in so many ways, is just detached from reality.
Yeah, she makes reality. She tells it how it is.
I would love for some armchair psychiatrist, or maybe even a real psychiatrist, to sit down and read Elaida, talk a little bit about what might be going on with her, because I think that there's some really interesting, and I don't know if it would have been intentional on RJ's part or not, but it would be interesting to see if there's some kind of mental illness kind of representation happening there.
And is it good or bad?
Exactly, and is it good or bad?
Well, that's an interesting question, because she's even before Fane, she's a really singularly opinionated plot device without Taviran or any other, Fane makes it very specifically, but it was there already, right? She's that way already.
Mm-hmm.
She's very much a narcissist. She doesn't see other people as people. A narcissist and a
sociopath?
Sociopath, thank you. And speaking of being a sociopath, the idea that she can just grab Rand, wrap him in swaddling, stick him in the basement until it's ready to pull him out to be killed. Imprison him until you can literally put him on an altar, and I swear to God, she would cut his own throat.
Oh, yeah.
If she thought that would,
Oh, yeah.
She would put him on the altar and literally just cut his throat if she thought that would lock the Dark One away. And that's what she thinks of him as.
Yeah, or she'd let him go into the pit, do his fight, come out, and then slit his throat as he walks out. She would be absolutely that cold as well.
Totally.
Gosh, she sucks.
Can you imagine when he comes out of that hole with Morden's body, what Elaida would do? If she was the Amyrlin seat at that point? Let's say he, wins the battle,
It would be a matter of turn whatever little remnants of circle she has left onto a fireball to just obliterate him. That's what would happen. Obliterate both bodies, just to be safe. Yeah, she's, it's a really good thing that she didn't get control.
And she's going to be the last person who believes that the taint has been cleansed.
Oh my god. No, men by definition are tainted. There is no cleansed half of the male half of the source. It's male. It is tainted. That's Elaida's worldview.
I am cutting that clip out and putting that in the front and saying it's Aradia.
that happened. Shucky darns.
And we get a little bit about her eyes and ears. She doesn't really have any outside of Andor. She didn't get the Amyrlin seat, eyes and ears, which we know are going right back to Suon. So she really has very little information. She's getting a lot of fake news coming in through, because again, everything's coming in through the Ajaz, and then they tell Alviarin whatever she wants to hear, and Alviarin filters all that through a dark friend perspective and tells Elaida whatever she wants her to hear. So Elaida is not well informed.
Yeah, and Elaida's ability to Evaluate information is really messed up because she has had such a narrow-minded diet of information for the last 25 years. She has paid attention to nothing outside of one very particular silo, and so she has no alternative sources for information. She has no recourse for fact-checking. She has no other avenues. She just has the one thing, and if that's cut off, then she's completely screwed up.
She's like a boomer on Facebook.
Basically. And then she's too proud to ask for help because it's, you can't look weak. You can't go around showing the world your weakness. That would be bad. I need to move forward with bad information and make bad choices rather than look weak and ask for help.
And she pushes those choices onto a group of women who really do need to be actively enforcing her decisions to make them happen. There's this deep state, you might say, that exists in the White Tower, and without their cooperation, her decrees go nowhere because the White Tower has to implement them. They have to do those things because, again, as we know, power just of I can stand in a field and shout decrees, but if nobody cares, what does it matter? That's what power is: people doing what you say. And so them not doing what she says is deliberately undercutting her power and makes her not the powerful Amyrlin that she thinks she is. Even though no one's going to argue with her, they're still not doing what she wants.
Mm-hmm. Which, also, pro tip, if you want to screw up someone's plan to take over the world, participate slowly.
Well, and she's absolutely incapable of the level of engagement with the sitters that she would need to get them on her side. She isn't even in the Amyrlin's quarters anymore. She makes it more difficult for people to get to her. She's already removed herself from the rest of the tower so that she can daydream over her new playhouse. And then she makes absolutely no effort whatsoever to ingratiate herself to the people who actually have the ability to implement her policies. I don't think that she has the capacity to do it, even if she wanted to. But she's got her head so far up her own ass that I don't think she even realizes that she needs to. It's, well, I'm the Amyrlin, so they should do this for me. And it's that is not how any of this works. She's less an Amyrlin and more a wannabe dictator, which is another little Trump parallel.
So we get a quote about Teslin and Jolene, who we know were sent to Abu Dar, mostly as punishment.
Because the petty. Because the petty is strong on this page.
Yes. The petty is very strong.
She's super petty and she's super bad at it.
Right. She's like Rand trying to be subtle. It's no.
It's just not happening.
But those two end up becoming Matt allies.
Yeah.
Because he rescues them from the Sean
Chan. They both respect him. They kind of don't hate each other despite being a red and a green. They go through a lot together, actually.
There's doesn't one of them slip a note into his jacket and they hang on to him? Yeah, there's that whole thing.
Yeah, Teslin does. There's a whole thing where he thinks it must have been Jolene, and then it wasn't her, and then he has to go break Teslin out because it was her that put the note there,
and that note saved him. What was it?
Nothing. It didn't save anything. It was a note to warn Elaine and Nynaeve to be careful.
That's right.
He feels obligated even though the note didn't do anything at all. But she tried, so he, casually breaks out some Shan Damani, as you do.
Yeah.
As you do.
I want to know why Teslin got sent to Abu Dar.
The same reason why she punished an ally. It's this: if I can punish an ally, I can punish anyone.
But what actually was she punishing Teslin for? You don't just pick someone's name out of a hat. Something.
Elaida might.
Okay, yeah. Fine, maybe. Alviarin has her setting sisters against each other later, having them do certain things. But this is, I think, too early for that. So I just, why? Because it says here that nobody is sure why, but there's 100 rumors flowering. I like TC Traveler saying that Teslin maybe just, talked back to Elaida and told her what for. That would honestly be the kind of thing Elaida would exile a close ally for.
It really just seems to be suspicion and exiling her own allies just to say, if I can do it to you, I can do it to anybody.
It's just politics. And we never see Teslin think about it. So yeah, it's really just the pettiest of petty politics. Ugh.
And also the whole, I can't trust anyone, not even all the red sitters, right?
Right, you have to scare them by coming down on them.
And she was Elaida's confidant, so maybe she was Elaida's confidant when Fane walked in, gave her that suspicion, and then, that whole thing that happens when you get rid of all your close friends, because someone convinces you that you need to.
Yeah, and you replace everyone around you with people that just tell you what you want to hear, and then you make bad leadership decisions. Yeah, that sounds like a bad plan that nobody should do. Yeah, so, and then Jolene... I forget why. I feel like we do see why Jolene gets handed penance and punishment, but I'm forgetting why.
It just makes me want to sing Jolene by Dolly Parton.
I know, yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Every time. Especially you, though, after the Dolly thing. I mean, should do that for next year's parody.
Jolene was in charge of recovering Suan.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so she fucked up big time.
You had to come back empty-handed. No wonder you got sent away. Yeah. And then...
Down fucked up.
Yeah.
Aaron.
I love that sketch.
Yo, line. Is Yo line here? Yo, line. Yo, line. Yo, line. Yo, line.
No. Oh, fuck.
But yeah, Elaida is ruling with fear. That's what she's going for. She's going with ruling with yell loudly and carry several very large sticks.
God, it's hard not to just constantly be talking about politics in this episode, because that's what Elaida is doing. That, like, the whole all the nations are trying her power, like, we talk about that every time a new president steps up into the U.S. Like, we're always like, this is a time when the new nations are going to try the power of the new leader, like, constantly. The Amyrlin seat in the White Tower is a superpower that rules over all the other countries. They're the only ones that have nukes, if you want to call them that, which is, people who can use the one power.
It's a white building split into red and blue.
Yeah.
It's got two major parties. I don't know, like.
Yeah. There's a certain amount
it's a nightmare.
Parallels
it is a nightmare
between the White Tower politics and
Come
American
over here
politics.
for fucking escapism, and what do I get?
Yeah, some fucking prescient writing.
Robert.
I mean, I think partially that this was going on in the U.S. in the 90s as well.
No, politics only got bad in the last 4 years. It was perfect up until
this is unprecedented in our times. What are you talking about? The good old days, remember?
Yeah, so we've never had any problems going back to Vietnam or before in this country. Nothing. Nothing political that he could be making
Korea was totally tight as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Iraq, 100% above board. Both times.
Yeah. There's no fodder for story writing.
Nothing wrong there.
Nope.
Nothing wrong there.
Okay, so the next subject she brings up is Elaine and Nynaeve being there with Teslin and Jolene, basically. And I love the way she, leads her down this path of being like, we have reports. And she's like, I don't care about reports. We also have these hand-drawn pictures.
I love
that. That's their appearance, exactly.
That.
And Eliza's like, fine.
So, here's the difference. Elaida tries to be petty and she's super fucking bad at it.
Yeah.
Alviarin, petty to her core. She's the soul of pettiness, and she's amazing at it.
Yeah. They're a well-matched pair.
She sucks, but I admire her.
They deserve each other. Put it that way. And Alviarin's afraid of Elaida, and Elaida is afraid of Alviarin, so they really deserve each other.
Although I do find Alviarin to be one of the more effective bad guys in the series.
It's a low bar, but yes, I agree with that.
But the way she manipulates Elaida, if the Forsaken weren't so terrible and demanding ridiculous things from her, she would be in much better shape.
Mm-hmm.
But she's caught between multiple Forsaken demanding multiple things from her, some of which are dead now. But they'll be back, don't worry.
Randland is lucky that the Forsaken were so fucking bad at their jobs, because the rest of the world was so ill-prepared for all of this and handled it so poorly that really there's no reason why the Dark One should not have won.
It's so true.
And it's because the Forsaken did not work as a team. If they had even a modicum of collaboration going on, everybody would have been fucked.
Again, stop bringing me back to the last election. Seriously.
Look, you wrote it. It's not my fault. But yeah, I think about that a lot, actually, that the only reason that it didn't go tits up was because the Forsaken just were a fucking mess.
We're incompetent. Yeah, it's the whole, are they incompetent or stupid? I mean, why not both? Like...
Porque no los dos.
Yeah.
Stupid, incompetent, greedy.
Because of the loss of knowledge, they just assume they were better than other people. And when they weren't. They weren't in any way, shape, or form. They were just more people.
And then they rested on their laurels and never actually put in the effort to, like, continue justifying their reputations. They're like,
We see that with big companies all the time, where they have some success in the past, and they think that should continue to give them success. And, like, in some cases it does, because they have the power, just like with Forsaken, they have the knowledge. But when you don't apply it, or update it, or keep it moving, things come out of left field, and all of a sudden, bonding? What the fuck is that? Like,
surprise!
Where did that come from? Yeah.
Their whole attitude of everything being so primitive in this era, and compared to what they're used to, yes, but it doesn't preclude innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And these people have taken stuff that they didn't necessarily understand, and they figured out ways to use it. And no, it wasn't the way it was intended, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
It actually was kind of badass.
Well, and it's like when you're restricted on one end, that gives you the opportunity to discover other things. For example, because the wise ones aren't very good at channeling, they become experts at dreamwalking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they have that expertise, and then in some ways can almost outstrip the Forsaken in some levels.
Because they never took their abilities for granted. They keep practicing.
That too. I think one of the things I really like about the wise ones too is that they are not restricted by the limits put upon the Aes Sedai in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this is how you do this thing, and there's no other way to do it. If you try to do it another way, that's wrong, even if it works. And you never do this, and you never do that, and you never do this. Whereas the wise ones are like, Calvin Ball, let's do this shit. And so they are, they're able to think outside the box much better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Better critical thinking.
I mean, even see how Gaul takes on the dream world in the last battle. He's been there for exactly 5 minutes, and he's thinking of things that Perrin never thought of. Like, it's a cultural thing that they just don't stop. But the Forsaken have a cultural thing where they just put themselves on pedestals and yell about how their pedestal isn't as tall as the next one over.
I kind of also imagine the Forsaken as being like CEOs in the 20th century being put into like medieval times.
Jeff Bezos is Jermandred.
Right.
But it's true. How do you fucking ride a horse when you're used to having someone else drive you around in a car?
Right.
Or whatever.
Like you have to accommodate to a whole another world. We get a bunch more of Elaida being wrong, especially about Morghese, right? Morghese in the White Cloaks, she would never go there. She must be dead. Of course, I think it's funny that her daughter thinks the exact same thing.
This scene, this and her thoughts about Logain in this chapter were what convinced me my first time through that she wasn't Black Aja. Like, for reals. The fact that she genuinely thinks of the Logain stuff as being, like, a lie, and that she agrees with Elaine on reading how unlikely it is that Morghese would do what she did. I'm like, okay, so she's not duplicitous. She's just a dumbass.
This POV definitely lets you know that, like, there's no way she's Black Aja.
And would never
right?
be.
She's
would never choose that.
And would never be. No.
She might be tainted by Fane or
she's
whatever.
far too
but,
self-righteous.
like, yeah, no, she's way too committed to what she says she's committed to. She just...
Yeah. I am going to save the world.
Yeah.
Full stop. End of story.
Yeah, end of story. Whatever needs to happen, me.
But yeah, she's very wrong about... And paranoid. Lots of the paranoia thoughts here.
Do we think that Elaida's whole I'm going to save the world thing is that she honestly thinks that she's the only one who can do it? Or because she just is all about that glory life?
It's a little bit of both. Remember, her whole purpose in life started when she foretold that the Royal House of Andor held the key to winning the last battle. Right? Mm-hmm. That was the whole... Once she foretold that, she attached herself to the House of Andor. Now, she attached herself, in my opinion, to the wrong. She, at the time...
I don't even think that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's categorically true.
At the time, the Royal House of Andor was clearly Tigraine.
Yeah, Mantiar.
And Rand, right? Like, but of course, I mean, you can argue that Elaine is also...
She is vital.
Important. She is vital. But the reason she wants to attach herself is she wants to be the one... She's the key to winning the last battle, so she wants to be the one who holds the key to winning the last battle. So even before Fane, for years, her whole career path is being the one who holds the key to the last battle.
Yeah.
Glory and recognition are obviously important to her, and maybe it became more that way as time went on. But I always had the impression when it first started that, like, she attached herself to Morghese because she honestly thought that she was the only person who would be able to handle it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. She thought she was being called. Like, the pattern is tapping you and saying...
Which, that never, ever goes wrong.
Yeah, no, for sure. She's like, I could be the savior? Yes, sign me up. No critical thinking on that. But yeah, I mean, she thinks at one point, many books down the line, that she could have been Amyrlin years ago if she had focused her career path on becoming Amyrlin and guiding the White Tower to the last battle. But instead, she decided to focus on the Queen of Andor because that's going to be how she saves the world in the last battle. And, like, she's very bitter over that.
I'm not going to lie. I think that she's grossly overestimating her capabilities.
So much. In fairness, when she was a novice, she was one of the most powerful channelers in centuries. Like, she was one of the first Supergirls, really. To be like, everyone's like, wow, you're so strong, you're gonna go so far, you have so much power, like,
She's the previous generation Supergirls. Yeah. Moraine, Elaida,
yeah,
so
exactly. And then she has the foretelling. Like, maybe you're supposed to do something important. Like, it's like how Nicola. She's basically Nicola, right? Super strong, has the foretelling, and has zero common sense.
Yeah, I see Nicola as definitely a young Elaida.
I mean, Nicola runs away to the White Tower from Saladar because she thinks they'll let her go faster. Like,
no, they won't.
I know, right? But it's like, Elaida, Niall and Elaida both really share this thing in this prologue about thinking that they're supposed to, like, replace the Dragon Reborn in the historical record, essentially. And it's like, yeah, I have a hard time imagining, how do you have the self-confidence and arrogance to think you are truly meant to supplant the prophesied savior and to actually genuinely mean it? Like, because she does genuinely mean it. How can you genuinely mean this, Elaida? How can you possibly think this? She does.
No, it ties back into narcissism.
Yes, it must. It must. The foretelling is not an easy cross to bear, though, at all.
We get the forkroot comment. It is interesting that I don't know if we ever see forkroot working on men, and I was curious if we knew if it worked on men or not.
It does. I believe that there's a fourth-hand account of that in Perrin's POV when he's talking with the Shan Chan about how to use the tea, because they make everyone drink it at one of their checkpoints at one point, and, like, less often than the women, a man will fall drowsy. I'm pretty sure that's a line, but that's like a fourth-hand rumor.
I think I remember that line, yeah. I'm nodding at that. I'm pretty sure that
but they have to think to feed it to the men first. Yeah. So.
Right, and that's definitely one of those things that, like, it's just not... It could be a huge vulnerability for Rand, and no one ever brings it up.
Yeah, no one ever tries to slip forkroot into his tea, or... It's wild that it's just a plant that exists, that one person knows. It's like, how... Did Rhonda McCura's, like, family, like, breed this, like, over generations? Like, how is this so unknown in the world, and yet it's just a common plant?
That's a really good question.
It comes from the Shadow Coast, which is something that, actually one of the only references to the Shadow Coast in this entire series. And I think it's just a barren place that it only grew in one very specific area, and... it was probably just a local tea that almost nobody used. And if someone, maybe there was a channeler who it affected, she just thought, oh, I'm allergic to that tea or something like that, Like, not someone who could channel, not necessarily someone who is a channeler, right? But yeah, I think it's just scarcity. I think it was one of those things where everyone's living in a bunch of different areas. This plant evolved, and... I mean, in a lot of ways it makes sense, because, like, if you can knock a channeler out... so they can't, with drugs, so they can't channel, why not, have whatever that is blocked chemically?
It's just so funny how Elaida thinks that it's, like, pointed at her. And it's like, maybe because the pattern didn't bother bringing it to your attention? Like?
Maybe.
But it's like, it's aimed at Aes Sedai. What do you mean aimed at Aes Sedai? You were the dumbasses that didn't notice it for 3,000 years, growing wild in the countryside. I mean, yes, on the Shadow Coast. But still, Green Aja should go exploring or something. Come on.
And something I am currently wondering about. If you could only channel where you can see, why don't we see more channelers with their eyes gouged out? in order to rob them of their powers. I think that would be an interesting way. I could see the White Cloaks doing that to an Aes Sedai they got their hands on.
Horrifying.
Because they cannot gentle somebody or still them. So, but they could take away their power without, just by blinding them.
Well, no, because first of all, the White Cloaks don't know shit about shit when it comes to how the power
That
works.
is true. Yeah.
But we also do get comments like it is hard to work around yourself and it's difficult to work on things you can't see, but I don't think it's like literally an equivalent to stilling.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to see things to channel. Like, you can only channel where you can see. That is totally canon.
Well, we've got a sister who had a block she couldn't channel with her eyes open.
Right, and that was a big problem because she could embrace the source, but she couldn't channel either way.
Right. So then does that mean that if you're born congenitally blind, you are by default not a channeler?
Well, how do you learn weaves if you can't see them?
Is it only a visual, though? I mean, you can feel weaves, right? Like, the males talk about, like, feeling weaves rather than seeing them.
I feel like this could be something that, you know, going back to the White Tower's really strict, basically, curriculum of teaching somebody how to channel, very much this is the way that you do this. Over time, it's entirely possible that the ability to feel a weave or any techniques used to teach channeling without sight had been forgotten. You know, so like theoretically it could be possible to channel without seeing, but nobody knows how to do it.
The one thing I'm thinking about specifically is Rand when he's in the box, when he says I can only channel where I can see, and that's why he blows the box up first, and he can't channel anywhere else. He can't
I mean, that could be an asterisk as far as I know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And this is very much a tangent, but it was just one of those things where it seems like if you really wanted to go brutal.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You could like have an Aes Sedai, you know, wander up and be like, with her eyes gouged out and be like, help me, I can't do anything. You know, that would be a good way to incapacitate an existing Aes Sedai.
Yeah, but if a White Cloak has the opportunity to gouge an Aes Sedai's eyes out, he's actually just going to slit her throat. So.
Yeah, I am kind of thinking of the Questioners.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're a whole other.
They rarely get a chance to practice on an Aes Sedai, but you're right, they probably would if they ever did, but they don't.
Imagine being an Aes Sedai captured by the White Cloaks and they gouge your eyes out so that they can question you for a long time and you can't do anything about it.
That would be upsetting.
My brain went to a dark place. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's
Like, man, that got heavy.
Yeah, my next note I have is about how the power of the institution grinds to a halt when no one participates, and this is how we should all unionize to disrupt systems we don't like. Just saying.
Nodding.
And then I'm on to the whole Black Tower discussion.
I think the biggest point there is just that she does not believe the numbers. She's wrong about a bunch of stuff leading up to this, and she's wrong about this too. The numbers in the Black Tower, you know, a green agent in Camelin claims there are over 400 in this Black Tower. A clever fellow, it seems he counted the supply carts that go out from the city. So that's probably pretty accurate. There are probably around 350, 400 Ashaman. Who knows how well trained they all are, but sending 50 Aes Sedai when it takes multiple Aes Sedai to capture one Ashaman and keep them captured, like, that's such a bad idea.
It's just the absolute hubris of this woman.
Yes.
At this point, I think it would take the Tower united to take down the Black Tower.
Yeah, no, they need to be treating the Ashaman like Aes Sedai when it comes to this calculation, not like, you know, sparkers that just woke up with their first sparking yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, and these are trained. These aren't men who discovered their power and are trying to learn how to channel when you come up, individualized, segmented. This is a united group of channelers who are trained by someone who kind of knows what he's doing.
And trained quickly. There is none of this spending decades as a novice and accepted before you get to be a full... No, you do everything with the power, and we know it's going to drive you nuts, so we have, you know, a policy in place for that. But, you know, hang on as long as you can, do as much as you can, learn as much as you can, because shit's getting real. And, you know, it's an imperfect system, but, you know, Rand wanted killing machines, and that's what he got.
Yeah, no, it was definitely break a few eggs to make an omelet sort of approach, whereas the White Tower is like, each one of these is so precious.
And reading this chapter, after Duzmai's Wells just makes you just like, how can you think you're gonna know? No, it's not gonna work.
It's like, oh, girl, you're such a dummy.
It's like, before maybe you could be like, oh, maybe it'll be like, but no, they've already gone up against like what 39 plus 30, like there's clearly at least that many Aes Sedai plus all the Shaido, and they just dominated.
Well, let's talk about Tovann, because Tovann and Sutama are both mentioned here, and I have the hardest time keeping them separate in my head. Oh, you're bailing out. Great. That's going away. We can talk about these wild red sisters. But Sutama, I always think of as a very scary, intimidating character, but in this passage, she's being, like, totally swept aside in favor of Tovann. And they are all involved, were all involved in the vileness 20 years ago. That is kind of the basis for a lot of the Logain rumors, really, right? The Reds, like, fucking around. Because that wasn't a black plot, that was a red plot. And I think that at least one Amyrlin died.
That was the Red stepping outside of...
Yeah, and at least one Amyrlin dies from that.
I mean, in as much as what they do to male channelers is decent.
They step outside of the White Tower's decency. And I'm pretty sure kill an Amyrlin. I'm pretty sure they kill an Amyrlin as a result. Because I've several chapters from now, Alviarin thinks about how there was a Amyrlin assassination that the Black Aja had to answer for, but they didn't do it. And it was really painful to, like, explain that they didn't do it. Pretty sure that was the Reds taking stuff into their own hands with the vileness.
I think this really ties into what I've always kind of thought about the Red Aja as a whole, that they're largely an extremist group. Mm-hmm. There are individuals in that Aja who are not, but I think they are grossly outnumbered by the women who are. I have a feeling that the women who participated in this there would have been a pattern of them pushing boundaries up until that point, until they got to this point where they thought they could get away with this and, maybe make this the new norm. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Surprised that it didn't happen more often, really.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe it did. Maybe across the centuries, this is how a lot of the rebellions in the Tower have come about, as the Reds continuing to get bigger than their britches and becoming a, autonomous police state within the institution. Kind of like the Questioners within the White Cloaks. Kind of like how they set themselves apart and even above, like, that energy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Tovann and Sutama and Loreen, who we never particularly see, were all sent away. And then Tovann is the one that Elaida thinks was the least damaged by that exile, right? So Sutama also is like, I'm fine, but like Tovann is the one that Elaida thinks is the most unscathed.
I doubt she's unscathed.
And we never see Loreen, so I think that's why Sutama sort of fades into the background at first, but she comes up later. But yeah, Tovann is... She gets bonded to Logain, she gets turned, and she gets toasted.
Not a good life.
Yeah, she probably deserved it, honestly, but it's not great.
Yeah, Murtaugh said that her fate is karma.
Yeah, the whole, like, forced bonding thing is, like, you can't really want that for anybody.
No, that's icky.
But Logain is also doing it in a extremely defensive manner, so I can kind of understand where he's coming from, and not feel too bad for her, given all things.
It's kind of interesting to look at the parallels and differences between Alana bonding Rand against his will and the Ashaman bonding the Reds who had come after them. I mean, in both cases, it's super gross. Like, it's super, 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 super gross. But it was clear that with the Ashaman, it was a sort of, okay, well, either we do it or they're going to do it to us.
Yeah, or a death.
Yeah, or, we're gonna get fucking dead. And I suppose the alternative would have been to kill them, so was it more merciful for them to force bond them than to kill them?
Given the way that Logain handles the whole situation, I'd say death would have been the less preferable option. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is... books in the future. Tovann has no idea what she's getting sent into at this point. Elaida's just like, Tovann, go, get fucked.
Suck it.
I mean, not in the same way that she sent Teslin off. That was a different kind of go get fucked.
There's many different
so
varieties.
many varieties, especially with Elaida. She has a lot of flavors.
There's so many ways to go get fucked.
Yeah, Elaida. Next thing I have is Elaida being angry because she's not being treated as first among equals because she just is Tower Law and she is wise and no one should ever question her. The temerity of asking whether her questions were wise. Let me just clutch my pearls real quick.
Yeah, honestly, the absolute dare of her advisor to try to have a conversation with her and potentially advise her. Like, who does that?
Yeah, like, how can your second in command dare to ask you to explain your reasoning?
How do they say, might want to think about that?
Yeah, it's like kind of their job. I don't know. But, yes, I mean, separate yourself from your ruling council by several floors. Completely distrust your second in command. This is a really good way to lead. This is totally setting up for success.
Yeah, I see absolutely nothing wrong with this. I predict that Elaida will be the greatest Amyrlin in the history of everything.
And all the nations are definitely going to want to work with her with this kind of conciliatory...
Oh yeah, for sure. I do love the juxtaposition between Egwene being set up as a puppet Amyrlin in exile and becoming a complete badass, and Elaida becoming Amyrlin and trying to be a badass, but ending up like a puppet and a failure.
Yeah.
The fucking swap on that is delicious.
And the fact that Elaida starts with the high ground, the tower, the institution, and just squanders it.
Whereas Egwene comes in as a novice and just owns her. This teenager comes in and owns her just, like, completely.
Yeah.
And is, like, winning people to her side.
Schools the whole tower.
Yeah. And, of course, the fact that Elaida is a piece of shit obviously helps. But, yeah, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous mirror, I think.
Yeah, it really proves that it is the person, not the office, that ultimately is going to settle how the geopolitics work out.
Mm-hmm.
You can have everything and just completely royally fuck it up.
It's an attitude, not a fancy clock, Elaida.
Right? Housewares do not an Amyrlin make.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I don't care how awesome your fucking timepiece is, girl.
Just wanted to point out that swan, fish, this ivory miniature that gets broken is a fish.
Swan is a fish.
Yeah, Elaida literally destroyed a fish.
In a fit of anger.
Yeah, she destroyed 2 fishes
unintentionally.
in fits of anger.
Yep. I wonder how old that fish was. Yeah.
Yeah, a very, very old fish. Kind of like Swan was really, really old. No, she wasn't old. She was really young. Swan's wildly young for that. But it's just like, oh my god, she picks out a fish and then breaks it. And she doesn't even think about the connection to Swan. But like, fish guts. Come on.
Fish guts, for sure.
I only saw this on this read for this podcast, so nobody feel bad if you didn't pick that up before. But
yeah, no, I never picked that up before.
Fish. She breaks the fish.
Because I've always thought about the fish. The fish always sort of felt odd to me. That whole like breaking something old in a fit of rage just because you can't control yourself.
Also, it's ivory, just like the tower.
Just like Swan was the fish of the ivory tower.
Yeah, it's just like, and again, she takes a priceless antique and just like self-soothes with it, which like fine, whatever. I like holding on to rocks, but like then she breaks it because she's pissy. It's just like, sure, let's just break pieces of history whenever we get in a snit. That is really a reasonable response.
Is that not how you guys deal with stuff?
I mean, I do, but I don't consider myself to be a role model in that capacity, so trying to stop that. I'm trying to like do that less.
Oh shit.
But yes, these numbers.
So in the last 10 years, we have found only 6 men with the ability. Okay. And in 20 years, they found 24, which means 24 minus 6, 18 of those men happened in that 10-year period of time following Rand's birth, where they found 18 men who could channel and stilled them. However, they only record 16 out of the 24, which means, again, doing the math, 8 were hidden.
Extrajudicial killings.
Gotta love them.
How much you want to bet one of those was,
Owen? Must be. I never thought about it, but it must be. There's only 8 to account for.
I would bet as much as $5 American on that.
Mm-hmm.
He's certainly one of the ones who could channel, so he's one of the 24. Whether he was one of the 16 or one of the 8,
he
I don't
should be
know.
one of the 8 because he was not dealt with according to Tower Law. That's part of how Moiraine justifies her whole deal with Tom, is like, that was outside of Tower Law, so that has to be what that was not in the Chronicle.
And that is also, when we hear about the nastiness around that time period, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah, the vileness.
Killing.
The vileness.
The violence. The killing of non-channeling males. Or of channeling males outside the White Tower before the trial.
Yeah, which also goes in concert with the killing of lucky men.
Yes.
That's one of the other things that happens. I mean, that even we see it in New Spring, is the whole, like, we have to find people, like, there a bunch of people who are lucky start to die mysteriously. And that's why that kid gets killed at the end of New Spring.
Right. And that might be why we have so few men who can channel in the last 10 years, because some of the lucky ones have been killed by the Black Oddjaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like genocide.
Almost.
Weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some eugenics bullshit.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, trying to wipe out all gay people is dumb because gay people come from straight people. Like, channelers come from non-channelers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a dumb genocide because you can't wipe them out. It's
dumb genocide.
As though there was anything
New band
else,
name, I
but
call
yeah, no, it's so illogical. Like, and it's there's no culture, there's no bloodline, there's nothing to wipe out. Maybe you can cull the whole population, maybe, but that's an unproven theory, right? Like,
right.
Mm-hmm.
But sure, let's just, kill every man who can channel and say that we're doing the world a favor. Like, are you though?
And I was thinking about this, and it's like, okay, well, there's so few men that they've found who can channel, but obviously everybody knows that if you can channel, you're going to get found and you're going to get stilled and or killed or gentled or whatever. So, like, why wouldn't people hide it? Like, it's entirely possible that there are just as many men who can channel now as there were at any other point in time. It's just they all go into hiding and, die quietly, or they have the ability and it just never kind of came to fruition.
And let's talk about this. The land was scoured. Okay, you and your 200 red sisters scoured the entire, like, where there's villages that haven't seen an Aes Sedai for, hundreds of years. No, you didn't scour the land. You scoured a couple of cities, maybe.
Yeah.
But, like, no. There's no way they did an even partial job in finding all these people. That's why Moiraine Moiraine alone does more to visit towns than I think all of the other sisters put together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties back to just the overall hubris of the White Tower in general.
Mm-hmm. Elaida is nothing if not the embodiment of the hubris of the White Tower.
I was just going to say, Elaida is very much a product of the attitude of the White Tower. Their elitism and their idea that they are infallible, and that when they decide that they've done enough, then obviously it's enough because they could not ever miss anything because they are infallible. Like,
circular logic too.
Yeah. I think I could probably go off for hours about, like, how fucking stupid the White Tower is and all the things that they need to do to fix their shit.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent object lesson in institutional bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and which is deliberately groomed by the Black Oddjaw and Ishamael, and, like, they're deliberately trying to undercut the power of the tower, and that's a bit where that incompetence comes from.
The forces of chaos really want the forces of light to be disorganized and not working together and fighting over stupid little things.
I know that the Forsaken are partially responsible for that, but I don't know. It seems to me like over the years, there should have been enough competent people to counteract it more than they did, don't you think? Like,
I tend to have more optimism and faith in people than I should.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
I've seen good people in organizations be incredibly ineffective. Like, the number of times, just today, Portland was having an issue where it's all these good workers who, like, just a little bit of incompetent leadership has really led them down a bad road in the government. Like, it doesn't take much, but when the top is corrupt or bad, it trickles down. So that's truly trickle down economics, is the leadership and stuff like that. Like, And all you need is a Black Ajah who's just going to kill anybody who's competent. And you can very quickly bend that curve down towards ridiculousness.
I mean, you have a point, too, about the Forsaken thing, because then I'm like, okay, well, what about the part where they never leave the tower? Well,
yeah.
Obviously, they could have very easily been poisoned into thinking that they don't need to, or that it's better that they don't.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that's always bothered me about the way they handle their business is that I literally mean servant of all. Who the fuck are they serving? Why are they not out making schools and hospitals and embassies and all of this other shit?
But they're servants of the future.
And that's the irony that we've talked about repeatedly with, all the Ajahs are terrible at what they're supposed to be doing. Why doesn't the yellow found hospitals? Why isn't the brown founding libraries? Why isn't the green founding...
Why are the greens not,
At the Borderlands fighting all the time. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. It should be military service. You go in for your 2 years and you can re-enlist if you want to, and fuck.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big thing, and all of those questions are something that should be, that are, because tradition, and why is tradition? Well, you've had Black Ajah influencing them for 2,000 years.
I always forget that they've been in there for 2,000 years, too. I always forget that the amount of time they've had to influence that institution is, so long.
Yeah.
2/3 of the time since the breaking they've been doing that.
It's the same amount of time as the Catholic Church has existed.
Yeah, it's a while.
And we all know how well that's going.
And yeah, that hasn't had any problems with corruption, and there's nobody even trying to corrupt it. There's no external force. Well, depending on what you believe. But yeah, there is no actual devil trying to corrupt the church, that's not happening. Yeah. There is no guy coming along being like, "Hey, Pope, you want some money?"
Yeah, no, and I mean, when you have an institution that has prejudice and whatnot built into its very foundations, every rock you kick over is going to have more of that stuff crawling out from under it. There's nothing that's untouched when you have it's baked into the structure and has been there for more generations than you can even count of leadership turnover. It was a really good long game by Ishii. That might have been his single most brilliant long con. Well, not even con, just long-term plan of everything he did was just set that seed to go.
Corrupt the institution and let that carry forward.
Right, because most people aren't going to see themselves as agents within a 3,000-year story who need to hold true to the end. They're going to do what puts food on the table today, right? They're going to fight for the crumbs in front of them. They're not going to be oh no, actually Ishamael clearly corrupted the system and I'm going to be so moral that I'm going to somehow evade that. Nobody's even trying to do that, and it's impossible.
What's left is the next paragraph is a bunch of her, terrible assumptions.
Oh yeah, this is her not understanding how other people think.
Taim should be dead, or else he would have totally popped up. There's no way he's going to serve the Dragon Reborn. Davram Bashir would definitely be killing him.
Both things which are happening.
She thinks that Davram Bashir is taking orders from Tenopia, which he's not.
It's just more of her listing off all of the things that have to be true because that's what's convenient for her to believe.
And also, she anchors it with the prophecy, right? If there's this new foretelling coming up, and that drives her down an even further crazy path because she interprets it as the Amyrlin seat will win, which is her.
There's also this other thing where she's misinterpreting Tarna's interpretation of the rebels, quietly desperate sheep looking for a shepherd. It's yeah, that is actually what was going on. Tarna does have the correct read. You're just wrong about who needs to step into that. That was them waiting for Egwene. They've got their shepherd now. They don't need you.
and that's not part of the information, right? This idea that Egwene is this... I would think the same thing. They got accepted as their Amyrlin seat. Clearly they think they're going to lose.
Right, they're putting her up as a sacrifice. Yeah.
I gotta say, this is one point where I think Elaida is spot on.
Yeah, you think that they are, that's their contingency plan, is surrender Egwene and rejoin Elaida. I guess, because the last battle has to come before anything else. If the last battle starts, you need to have one Amyrlin, not two.
Now, they are a bunch of sheep looking for a shepherd, and they just happen to get the most badass shepherd. They stumbled upon the right person.
Because her best friend is a sheep herder. Her best childhood friend is a sheep herder, not her best current friend. But
Right. So she learned from him.
She's qualified to herd sheep because she hung out with the Dragon Reborn back in the day.
And that's why he's so good at managing all the countries, is he's just been herding sheep his whole life. So these are just, noble sheep.
Yeah, no, he's got Bashir as, like, the border collie to help.
Right. Go bark.
Oh, Bashir as a border collie is delightful. And I need somebody to meme the shit out of that, like, ASAP.
What does that make his wife?
I don't know, probably another border collie?
Yeah, just a bigger border collie.
All right, fair.
Yeah, unfortunately, being a shepherd does not prepare you with leadership skills.
Unless you're herding cats. It's the only other thing I could think you could.
I mean, I suppose herding cats would teach you futility.
Yeah, it teaches you learning how to let things go that you can't control.
But yeah, and then Elviarin comes back with this really good point that, like, you've got 300 Aes Sedai, you have one of the great generals. And remember, she's only got 300 Aes Sedai of her own, and she just sent 50 of them away. That is a sixth of her force.
Mm-hmm.
This will go well.
Yeah, this is going to go great.
And she knows who all is out there. Like, she knows the strength of the people who are in Saladar. You'd think she'd be able to math it out.
But Elaida, plan things, look at empirical evidence, and make a reasoned choice? What?
That is so not her thing.
First of all, her facts are always going to be wrong. She's always going to have motivated reasoning when looking at the facts.
Mm-hmm. Even if her facts are right, her interpretations will be so wrong as to make them false.
Because she's able to twist every piece of information that she comes across. She's able to either she will twist it to fit her narrative, and if she can't do that, she discards it.
Yeah, she even says here that, like, eyes and ears always exaggerate, and, like, everyone else who uses scouts or spies trusts those people because that is the relationship of a scout or a spy. And Elaida's just like, well, I don't like what they have to say, so they're definitely lying. It's not how that works.
I had a question here. Elaida says her plans were already working among the rebels, but that was her secret. What is that? The secret of having a spy? Of what? Bannon, yeah. So that's Bannon.
Yeah, because Bannon's job is trying to keep the ruling council from making any forward progress on anything. That's her first order of business, and that's what Elaida berates her for when she first comes back. She's like, well, you didn't manage to stop them from doing shit, now did you? And Bannon's like, I tried, and I totally managed until the Egwene character showed up.
Yeah, all of a sudden there was a competent leader, and
then I started to be loyal to her, and, like, now I don't like you, so now I'm gonna turncoat in the tower. But yeah, Elaida still thinks that Bannon is her secret weapon at this point. And then we've got this whole concept of spreading out the penance over 10 years, which I think is honestly brilliant as far as Elaida's people management strategies go. Like, yeah, that would keep them real mad at you for a whole decade. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a great way to make them hate you so much.
Yeah, you want to stay hated and despotic for the rest of your career? That's a really good strategy.
Yeah, give them 10 years worth of reasons to just hate your fucking guts.
And again, I'll go back to Fane. Fane has influenced her. She's going to use intimidation and fear as a ruling tactic, just without a doubt. That's where she's going with that.
But her genius in how to do it, I think, is all her own narcissistic sadism.
Gonna nod on that one. Yeah.
Well, she comes across to me like a very authoritarian personality anyway. Like, even before she ever encountered Fane, just, like, her whole attitude in Camelin was bullshit. Like, girl is up on her high horse. And I feel like Fane's influence, and I might be pulling this out of my ass, but I feel like a good portion of Fane's influence is feeding on what's already there. So, like, with Matt's whole situation with the dagger, feeding on his natural suspicion of people from outside the Two Rivers and Aes Sedai, and with Elaida, feeding into her natural authoritarianism, her narcissism, you know, and just sort of taking it to its most ridiculous conclusion.
I agree. He doesn't invent anything because that's the evil of Shadar Logoth. It's the evil that people create amongst themselves. It doesn't come out of the ether or the void. It's not a personification of entropy. It's human nature.
Yeah. It just amplifies the worst in someone. Mm-hmm. Kelsey said the exact same thing. I swear to God, I didn't read that before I said it.
Great minds.
We get a little bit about who she's going to still exactly when she wins, which I think is pretty irrelevant. stealing a few people, but I don't want to weaken the tower. I'm just going to send away 50 sisters, but I don't want to weaken the tower. Like, you have done more to split and weaken the tower than... There are currently 250 sisters in the tower. There were 1,000 of them before you became Amyrlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the act of taking that office has weakened the tower, you stupid twit.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, Egwene would have been a nice prize for the tower, but, you know, I guess we're just gonna have to throw her out. Pity. Just like, man, Aes Sedai are cold. I mean, granted, like you said, Seth, totally agree that was their final fallback position. All the Aes Sedai are willing to sacrifice Egwene. It's not just Elaida, but still, she's not particularly warm and fuzzy about it.
And we do get evidence here that Elaida is intelligent when she has the right facts, right? Like, it's not that she's dumb. I want to clarify that. It's just that she doesn't believe reality.
She gets in her own way a lot.
Yeah, no, she's a she's a terrifying mix of bullheadedness and intelligence. Like, these things together in combinations like this is like bad things happen when those things collide. Because they're very strong and smart.
Yeah, I've seen my own life. Trust me, I'm aware.
I was gonna say that honestly, that kind of hits because intelligent and bullheaded. That's me.
And so some of that intelligence is that she realizes she studied the law. She knows exactly how they got around it. She knows that it doesn't require them to be in Amyrlin's seat. You know, it's just like, that's a technicality. But I studied it because that's how I took down Suan.
I like that she backs up that this is a perfectly valid rationale. Like, I like that she doesn't have to be convinced of the validity of her enemy. She's like, oh, that's how you're going to play it. Okay.
Well, I think it's also sort of like, well, that's exactly what I would have done, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
And they've already rebelled, so it's not like she's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter what they're going to do. They're still traitors.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And the legitimacy of the election makes them more traitors, so in a lot of ways that reinforces her personal belief that they need to be taken
That's
down.
a good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is very consistent.
That's true. The legitimacy of the election, the fact that they set up a hall, they went through the ceremony, all of that stuff, absolutely set them up not just as a group of exiles and traitors, but a literal tower in exile. They are organized now. Like, they've set themselves up in opposition to Elaida's tower, which takes the whole thing to another level.
They are rebels.
Yeah, a government in exile, not just hecklers in another country.
They're not just disagreeing with her. They're not just making their point known. They have actually set up they have created a rebel tower. They are rebels.
They're now claiming that the White Tower is occupied by usurpers. Like, the White Tower is no longer an institution. It's currently infested with pests.
She assumes they're going to lose a bunch of people when we know for a fact they gain a bunch of people. Although some of that has to do with how clever Egwene is in manipulating and being like, oh yes, join us for this battle against the Band of the Red Hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they join, and she's like, oh, by the way, we're going after the White Tower. And they're like, what?
Oh, we've already moved our army.
Yeah, haha, and now they think you're our allies, so you're stuck. So yeah, there is definitely that little bit of cleverness that, again, she underestimates Egwene.
And I think that she's right here that if Egwene had to march her army to the Shining Walls for 2 months, she would lose a lot of people. The fact that she's able to leap right into position without that whole month of marching up ahead, I think does actually help. And of course, Elaida could never have anticipated that the army would just poof onto her doorstep. Like, it was a reasonable assumption that marching traditionally on Tar Valon would be very disheartening.
At this point, she doesn't even know that traveling has been rediscovered, right? So
that's pretty much how she discovers that well, no, she knows about it here with Rand.
Right, she knows Rand has.
But she doesn't know that Aes Sedai have it until the army shows up on her door.
Ah, shit.
Guess that's a thing.
Alviarin here is saying it'll take their army 5 or 6 months to reach Tar Valon. In that time, we could increase the guard. And Alviarin's like, no, there's no point. But, like, dude, in 5 or 6 months, the last battle's gonna be over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in 5 or 6
accelerating
months,
time frames.
Elaida will be a well-trained Damani, Alviarin will be dead. Like, on and on and on.
Girl, bye!
Like, their time frames are so far off because traveling just changes everything.
And then we have this lovely thing about how Alviarin will be weaseled fur trim on Elaida's cloak, because everything has to be vindictive and violent with Elaida, because she's such an authoritarian. Like, you will kneel, you will be an accoutrement to my style.
I will use you as an accessory.
She's so possessive. And like making the rebels pay on their knees for the, historical stain. It's going to take generations to erase this legacy. And it's just like, way to take this all so personally.
She takes everything super... I was literally just going to say she takes everything super personally. Like, everything is a personal attack.
She makes Rand look humble. That's how personally she takes everything.
Seriously. It's like, girl, it is not always about you.
Yeah, as much as I don't like Alviarin, there's something so satisfying in that scene when she puts Elaida on her ass and is like, listen, you fucked up. You're going to do what I say, or you are going to be thrown out of this tower. Like, that scene is so satisfying. I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, they're a well-matched pair. I love when they slap each other down.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, trash. Meet more trash.
Well, and Elaida doesn't get power back until Alviarin is essentially pulled out of the tower by the Forsaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Alviarin had been able to stay, Elaida would have never gained back a step.
Yeah, you're right. It's the weeks away. Yeah, because Elaida's not stupid. She takes full advantage of that little bit of leash once she gets it. She uses it,
and then we get this foretelling.
Yes, which is everything about it is correct. Everything about her interpretation is incorrect.
Shock.
The White Tower will be whole again, except for remnants cast out and scorned, whole and stronger than ever. Rand al'Thor will face the Amyrlin seat and know her anger. The Black Tower will be rent in blood and fire, and sisters will walk its grounds. This I foretell. Love that.
And I love that it, like, rocks Alviarin. Like, Alviarin's over there like, oh shit! Oh shit, I gotta go report this. Oh my god. Like, she's freaking out.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that goes right back to the Forsaken.
Oh, yeah.
Messana.
Yeah, there's a lot. Alviarin is very unsettled by this and takes it all the way up. Because it's like...
You will not believe this shit.
Right? Because some of this might spell, like, disaster for the Forsaken's plans. Or it might mean that they're gonna succeed, like...
Mm-hmm.
How often do you think Messana just casts Cloak of Shadows, or a Cloak of Mask of Mirrors over herself and just goes into these meetings and is chilling in the corner watching?
All of them?
Because she does say she seems to know what goes on in there. Do you think she's listening, using a listening weave, or do you think she's actually, like, in the room? Or do you think she has a spy?
Honestly, a listening weave makes more sense. Some sort of, like, far listening, far seeing sort of weave that lets her stay in her, command center in her rooms and watch all of that. Because, I mean, like, she's Forsaken. She's not going to be literally traipsing about to eavesdrop on people her own self all the time. That's way too much work. There's a weave for that.
It's like iPhone, but make it Wheel of Time.
Exactly.
I can't help but imagine Messana as Harry Potter with the invisibility cloak, like wandering around the halls of the big magic tower, spying on people. She could be.
It seems a little bit like, too mundane for a Forsaken. But yes, I can totally see it.
Mm-hmm.
But Messana is the most mundane of all the Forsaken. She is the administrator. She is like, that's what she does. She's up in the tower. She doesn't go anywhere. She doesn't do anything. She just spies and controls and pulls strings.
That's true. And if you want something done right, do it yourself.
Right.
I mean, she's my favorite Forsaken, so I can actually kind of see that.
In the same way that, like, the spider does some things.
Yeah.
Like that.
Canadian Kelsey made a good point that wouldn't the meetings be warded?
I'm not sure that's something that the White Tower does. I thought that was something the Rebels started doing because the weave of eavesdropping was discovered by, in air quotes, Nynaeve and...
Do they have wards against eavesdropping before? I thought they did.
I thought they did, but I thought they were not in common usage.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair.
I know Moraine used them.
But yeah, how often do they? No, yeah, because when we see it at the beginning of Great Hunt, Moraine weaves one, and Swan is like, whoa, we're going with the big guns. Okay. So yeah, you're right. It's probably not super common.
Well, and I mean, honestly, like, why would you feel the need to do that in your own seat of power?
Because you don't trust anybody.
And
especially
Moraine,
given Elaida's hubris.
And Moraine using that weave was actually one of the reasons why she was a bit of a legend among Aes Sedai, right? Is she used that weave and other people just didn't know about it. Like there's other things like that that was her secret, right?
Oh, the listening
that was something.
Weave?
Yeah, the listening weave is something she picked up. She learned as a Wilder,
right?
I thought.
Yeah, with her Cassiera as a focal point.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they also don't have inverting, right? So it's really hard to spy on someone with the power when you can't invert your weaves. You're like, hi, I'm spying, like awkward. But Masana has the inverting technology that nobody else has. So.
Well, and it seems to me, too, that, it's entirely possible that Masana or any of the Forsaken would have the ability to circumvent a ward of some kind.
I think you got to break it. I don't think there's any way to just get around it.
But yeah, if they don't think to use them very often, because why would you think that would be it? But yeah, maybe she just sneaks in. Maybe she just has a secret tunnel with like a little peephole and just like manually spies on these
Masana's
meetings.
eyes through like a painting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why not? But yeah, I mean, it's like how they use 13 to create a shield or learn to ward their dreams. Like, I agree with Canadian Kelsey that it seems like the kind of thing that would have just been a leftover normal part of like tower tradition. Like, always ward important meetings. Seems like the kind of paranoid thing they would do post Trolloc Wars.
I can't wait to see what those look like in the show.
Oh my god, they probably won't look like anything. They'll probably just be like a sound effect or something. I hope they look like
I
something.
always imagine them to look like totems, like in an RPG game or something like that. That like a druid kind of character would plant, like in World of Warcraft. That's what I always imagine them to look like, so that like when Moiraine warded a room, I imagined like these little totems in each corner of the room, like giving off some kind of like, I don't know, soundproof force field, cone of silence shit. I don't know.
Oh, I checked the beginning of the episode. I didn't, when Alviarin came in, there was absolutely no mention of, like, stopping to weave or anyone seizing the source, or, like, she just walks in and they start talking. I don't think there's any weave against eavesdropping in this, having been woven.
They're dumbasses. I can accept that.
Not surprising. Our expectations are very low at this point.
Yeah, quite.
So she has her plans, and she starts sending out all these messages. The first one to Caroline Domandred, who we know ends up with Riotin outside the city, right? So she's currently rebelling, right?
Yeah, because that's what happens when Rand gets back and gets an update on how the world's been going. Caroline has gone off to rebel and hang out with Darlin and the others. She joins after this.
I have to wonder if that wasn't this message isn't part of what got her to go off and rebel.
I think it is. I never understood that timing, and I think it has to be this. That's the only thing that makes sense. Like, okay, now fracture, now rebel, now undercut the dragon's power, because we are about to have a solution to all of this dragon taking over your nation's nonsense.
Also, this whole I have the dragon, maybe she sent her that letter being like, yeah, now's the time, I've got the dragon, rebel.
Well, she probably says something more like subtle than that.
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah.
sure.
The ham is in the basket.
The pig is in the blanket.
I almost did a spit take on that one.
The tinkers are tinkering. And then she trusts Alviarin because she has to.
Womp womp.
And I think that brings us to the end of this POV.
Paragraph? Or 2 paragraphs? I can read the last 2. The last one's really good and parallels well with Niall upcoming in a future episode. So yeah, I'll read the last 2, and that should take me less than 5 minutes. Elaida spun out her plans, enlarging on what Alviarin knew, revealing some that she did not, because at the last, an Amyrlin did have to work through her keeper, however much she hated the woman. There was a pleasure in watching Alviarin's eyes, watching her wonder what else she still did not know. But while Elaida ordered, divided, and assigned the world between the Arith Ocean and the spine of the world, in her mind frolicked the image of young Althor on his way to her like a caged bear, to be taught to dance for his dinner. The chronicles could hardly record the years of the last battle without mentioning the dragon reborn, but she knew that one name would be written larger than all others. Elaida do Avrini Aroyhan, youngest daughter of a minor house in the north of Mirandy, would go down in history as the greatest and most powerful Amyrlin seat of all time, the most powerful woman in the history of the world, the woman who saved humankind. Inferiority complex much?
Honestly, like, maybe she just didn't get any validation from her parents or something.
Youngest daughter of a minor house, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Never gonna be good for anything, not even marriage.
Youngest siblings, I'll tell you what, always a pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
as someone who has a youngest sibling, I can absolutely concur.
Agreed. I am definitely way more awesome than said youngest sibling.
As a youngest sibling.
Yeah, you're an only child. Shut up.
I have I have a half sister, but
Oh, okay. Here, okay.
she is an older half
They
sister.
don't count. I have one of those too.
Yeah, my warder is in that position as well, youngest of 4, but the other 3 are more like cousins than siblings.
Yeah, she's more like a cousin than a sibling because she spent a lot of her time with her mother.
Ah. But yeah, Elaida has probably some childhood trauma she should be resolving before she tries to drive the White Tower. Probably.
I mean, I feel like, and this goes for anybody, everybody should go to therapy, but Elaida definitely could use therapy.
That girl needs therapy.
Yeah.
That girl needs therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Egwene could too, clearly.
Good God.
Before going into
Get that
position.
girl.
But there is no
Get
therapy,
that girl
Aja.
some EMDR.
Well, to borrow another term from another podcast. There should be a therapy, Aja, but there isn't.
Mm-hmm. It should be a wing of the yellow.
It should be. It should be.
Mm-hmm. Well, after Nynaeve's whole unknotting of the bullshit in the Ashamon's head, you know, like, I could see her heading up a mental health wing. The Randall Thor Memorial Psychiatry.
Yeah, although that was almost more of a physical effect than a mental one.
Yeah. Well, they should be exploring it more, and certainly she has given them ideas, because she did it on people other than Rand, right? Like, in theory, what she's worked out could spur innovation.
Well, and wasn't it that she did it on a bunch of other people, and then she tried it on Rand, and she's like, holy fuck.
Yeah, it is. And he's like,
I
no,
can't
I got
do
a face
this.
of gold, it's fine.
This shit's fucked.
Thanks to Jess so much for showing up and helping us with this. This was
Really appreciate
great.
that.
Thank you so much for having me. It was delightful.
It's been a minute since we've sat down to record, guys. Yeah. I'm not sure still know how to do this.
It's been an entire week. I mean, I don't know. It's a long time. It's a real long time.
It feels like a long time. And, well, we only recorded a Patreon episode last week, so it's been like 2 weeks since we sat down in front of a live studio audience.
You can forget a lot of things in 2 weeks.
No kidding. I've been trying real hard. It's amazing how many drugs you can do in 2 weeks. Not that I would. No.
I would. I'm not that cool. I just do a couple of drugs in profusion.
My only drug is alcohol, but I'm off the sauce right now, so sad state of affairs. Although not being hungover is pretty awesome.
It's really great.
Yeah.
I'm trying to combat the COVID-15 right now, so alcohol is one of the things that I decided was just too many calories.
No, you people are crazy. I need my habitual head change all day, every day. But we are recording so much earlier in the day, I'm not actually drinking yet for the day.
Yeah, that's one thing we are changing. We're recording at 3 p.m. our time, PST, rather than the normal 6:30 PST. We're going to try a slightly earlier time because that gives us a chance to, do things with our nights.
Yes.
Afterwards. And also, one thing I'm trying to do for Crown of Swords is book content creators. And a lot of those folks work during the day and go out and do stuff at night. And also on the East Coast.
Going out.
Yeah.
Nobody should be going out.
Well, you know what I mean.
Going
things.
into Zoom parties and drinking.
Right. Things are changing. People are getting vaccinated. I know a lot of vaccinated folks who are, going out and doing things.
My dad got his vaccination. He's gotten both of his sticks. So,
nice.
My mom turned 65 at the end of the month, so she'll be eligible to get hers. And my husband and I are both going to be eligible at the end of the month as well. So
Nice.
Yay.
Nice.
Pretty fucking stoked.
I actually know a lot of healthcare workers who have gotten it, even if they're working.
Yeah, my
from
friend
home.
Ted is an X-ray tech, and I'm pretty sure he got his.
Yeah.
I know a few people who are in emergency services. I know a volunteer firefighter who's younger than me, but you're part of a rural volunteer emergency response. You're going to be up near the front of the line. So
Definitely.
Totes my goats.
But yeah, we're starting a lot of new things today. We're starting a new time. We're starting with new video. We're starting a new book. It's like a time of beginnings. It's spring almost.
Fucking stoked for spring.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?